Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be our monthly ASIC pricing update video. This is going to be for December 2024. In this series, what we are doing is we are just looking for deals, right? Realistically, I'm going through prices, looking for any fluctuations, whether they're major increases, major decreases. We're kind of trying to keep up with the trends, therefore we can try to make the best buying decisions possible here, right? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. Before we fully get started to this video, do want to clear some things up, right? So there's been a lot of misconceptions when it comes to customs and duties and fees and picking your own vendor, right? It's up to you to pick what vendor you like to purchase from. I have my list. They're in the description of the video. The reason I choose those vendors specifically, it's because I have personally purchased through them, right? I'm not just shilling them because I'm trying to get an affiliate sale or anything like that. Those are actually who I purchase mine from, okay? So these are some things to understand with some of the others that people tend to use, right? So Crypto Miner Bros being one of the bigger names. So there's a huge misconception here with saying that the prices and the taxes and that it's all in shipping to your house. It is not, right? You have to understand what the biggest issue that's been going on recently has been with taxes and duties and customs fees. A lot of misinformation regarding this, right? So this is directly from Miner Bros' website, okay? When it comes to taxes and custom duties, we help you to reduce your tax to making lower invoice, right? Which is what the majority of the vendors do, including my preferred vendor, which is Nhash, okay? You have to talk to them before you put in that order, get everything cleared up. That way you fully know what to expect, what's going on, and what the process is. But Miner Bros does not include duties fees in those prices, okay? Our product are excluded of all value-added taxes and custom duties sold by Miner Bros. You will be solely responsible for paying any outstanding taxes and duties as per your country's laws and customs. If any matter, Miner will be returned to Hong Kong client need to pay additional shipping costs. So if something happens and it does get held up and you kind of just ignore it or you take too long and it gets shipped back to them, you're going to be stuck with those costs on top of that. Okay, so this is a huge misconception that, oh, I'm purchasing from Miner Bros or ASIC Marketplace or whoever because they're including those fees. The majority of them do not. Okay, so make sure you fully understand that. Let's go to the next competitor. This is from ASIC Marketplace. Again, this is directly from their website. Do you help with lower invoicing for a lower customs duty payment and to save tax? We understand that you are liable to pay customs duties and taxes. However, we will do everything we can to help you reduce the tax by providing a lower invoice, making it easier and cheaper to get past customs. Okay, which is kind of weird that they're saying it this way, but that's essentially what they all do. Okay. So again, consider that there's been issues with people's, miners getting flagged and such. Again, it's been fairly rare. Realistically, it's been more specific to the Miami port. I know it has happened to quite a few others. It's kind of hit or miss, especially if you're doing only like ones or twosies orders. If you're ordering by the pallets, that is a little bit different, right? Because they are going to just look at it a little bit harder. Okay. Let's go to the other big popular one, and this is CMC, Coin Mining Central. Same thing, we'll go down. This is directly from their site. All international orders sold and delivered by CMC are exclusive of value-added tax. We are not liable for any duties or taxes or fees that may be incurred by the customer. It is customer's responsibility to know the local duties and tax laws and handle any customs issues that may arise. CMC shall not be liable for any cost of damage or expense as a result of error from calculating taxes and duties pertaining to your order. Okay, you need to fully understand this, that yes, it's possible for your delivery or your order to get flagged and have to pay that 28-30% tax on top of whatever you're ordering. So there is always going to be that chance unless you decide to do DDP shipping, which all these guys will offer, including Nhash, but it's going to be a substantial increase to the price. Okay, so there is one, and you guys are familiar with TerraHash. TerraHash is of Terra.io hosting, that they are saying that it is DDP shipping. So for theirs, it says every order includes taxes and duties in the price. Okay, meaning that you are not going to be liable, that they would be liable if any issues arise because they are paying for it up front. Okay, so if you're in an area where it's potentially likely, or not potentially likely, but there's a higher chance of your item getting flagged, for example, me being down in South Florida, that Miami port being kind of notorious for these things, might be a better option here, especially if the price is somewhat close to the competitors, right? So specifically I had flagged here the AL3, which for example on NHash, which is typically cheaper, it's $39.99 versus these guys being only $100 more, and it gets rid of that potential burden. For $100, this would probably be the better route to go if you're in a location where that might affect you, okay? Or if that's a cause of concern for you, which, as a matter of fact, any of you guys, if your order typically goes through the Miami port, if you've ordered anything recently these past 2 months, please let us know in the comments if you have had any issues, okay? Or just in general, regardless of your port, because I know quite a few of you guys ordered L9s, a lot of other ASICs, and have had 0 issues. Okay, so kind of just keep that in mind, right? So just wanted to make sure people were aware of this. I think a lot of people were like, oh, I'll pay that higher price on ASIC Marketplace or Crypto Miner Bros, because typically they're significantly higher than the competition, right? And the mindset was like, okay, I'll pay the extra so I don't have to worry about it. You're taking the same risk here, right? It's just kind of luck of the draw. And it's hard to tell what happens because unfortunately this is a confusing thing for a lot of people just because they don't really know the policies, and even customs themselves doesn't know the policies 99% of the time, and you're just going to get screwed with whatever their final decision is because a lot of times it's a very limited window and it is impossible to get a hold of anybody, right? So this is one of the extremely shitty parts with ASIC mining or just importing in general, especially importing these like niche items like this where kind of a lot of the people involved in the process aren't familiar with it at all whatsoever, right? So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you order any of these things, which again, depending on the value of it, something that's $1,000, not going to make or break you, but for any of you crazy degens ordering these like $17,000 L9s, 30% tax on top of that is potentially pretty significant, right? So just something to consider. And if Terahashes is going to cover that for you, this may be the better option, especially with these higher priced ASICs, right? So just something to consider there. Let's continue on. So let's just take a quick look at the overall market. And currently, this is December 31st. This is the day before New Year's. We've been kind of dumping quite a bit, right? So if you look at the short-term price action recently, just a few weeks ago, we hit our all-time high, which is over 100 grand. We hit about 108,000. Currently have retraced down to 93, so about a 14-15% correction, which a lot of the corrections have been in the 15 to 20% range. So is this the end of it? Are we going to go down to 89, a little bit lower? Because we did go down to 91. We're going to see what happens. Is that a lot of people doing tax loss harvesting, moving things around in their wallets, selling things last minute? Potentially, will things potentially recover as soon as tomorrow? We're going to have to wait to find out, but there are a lot of potentially bullish things, specifically the inauguration coming up. We're going to have to see what happens here. We typically do know also Q1 of 2025, which is the main year, especially when compared to previous cycles, is a very bullish time, right? January, February, March, extremely, extremely bullish consistently. Will it hold up? Maybe, maybe not. But if things kind of repeat, they most likely will. Will it happen in January? Will it happen a little bit later in February? February tends to be one of the more bullish months. We're going to have to wait and see, but chances are these next 3 months will be pretty freaking exciting, right? Especially for the alts. We'll wait and see what happens there. Let's look at overall mining profitability. And top of the list is just all the Scrypt ASICs, right? Same thing as it's been this past month. It's been going down, right? When we did it last month, it was about $60 for the larger guys, for the L9 and the Vulk miners and such. It's currently down to about half of that just because price action, right? Doge has retraced quite a bit. Difficulty has also increased quite a bit, so those two factors are playing into this price action here. As we go down the list, I mean, nothing has really changed a whole lot. The AL1 did retrace a bit also. That one, the lithium ASICs are going to probably change quite drastically. The AL3s did start shipping, so any of you guys who ordered, you should have probably gotten your shipping notice already. If not, it'll be in the next few days. Again, New Year's is tomorrow, so don't expect much action there. But we'll probably start seeing a uptick in the hash rate as soon as probably by the end of this coming week, right? By Friday, Saturday. Kind of get an idea of how hard that hash rate's going to get hit, because the lithium did have a nice run up. It's dipped almost in half though, right? So that's, we're going to have to wait to see what happens there. As we go down the list, we have this 21XP, a lot of the Hydro units, and the L7s, right? They have all the freaking variants there. Some of the ETC hash ASICs are here as well. These are the bigger guys. The profitability did go down quite a bit on them. That's down to 13 bucks. So overall, as far as mining goes, not the greatest look, but again, just dependent on your strategy. If you're just mining and hodling, you don't really care a whole lot. You're just holding everything anyway. But if you are mining for profit and taking it out there, then times are kind of sucking right now, right? So kind of to each their own on that front, but things are overall looking pretty good. But of course, because of the profitability being with a lot of the Scrypt ASICs, that's where the focus is going to be, and that's where the fluctuations were this month, right? Realistically, the BTC ASICs have not budged at all. They increased last month just because of the run-up, and they've kind of just been remaining there. All of the other ASICs, for the most part, have also just remained stagnant. The Kadena ASICs, the CKB ASICs, some of those did go up a tad bit, but because they retraced as hard as they did, they didn't really go up a whole lot. So they're all just kind of ranging for the most part. And even then, realistically, a lot of them are due for potential upgrades. So this is kind of one of those things where I think a lot of people are also kind of waiting, just because, again, a lot of, especially the altcoin ASICs, a lot of them are due for potential upgrades, right? So potentially at this point, my guess is sometime around Q1, expect a good amount of announcements, right? Whether it's probably going to be towards the later, right? Typically from what we've seen from these manufacturers, March, April tends to be a very popular time for releases, right? Because there are a lot of holidays coming up. January, there's a big one in China in February. So a lot of downtime there, but typically that's why March, April tend to be big months for releases, right? And if they're going to take advantage of this bull market, that's kind of the time, right? So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, what algos come out, what machines come out, if any at all, right? Realistically, we don't even know. We're kind of just speculating on that front, but it is just something to factor in as you look through these ASICs if you're interested in any of them, okay? So as far as pricing goes, one of the bigger fluctuations has been this AL3, right? AL3 and the little AL2 lights, and all the lithium ASICs in general, just because it had that nice run up, right? It did run up a pretty good amount. Let's pull it up actually. It went up to like what, 280 or something? Pretty high recently, and that's what caused a lot of the, 289, right? So it's currently down less than half from this high just a few weeks ago, which is pretty crazy. And unfortunately, what this did, it caused AL3 to sell extremely well, right? Realistically, if it would have been ranging, if it would have stayed down in this range, if this kind of green portion would have never happened, I would definitely be more bullish on the AL3s, just because chances are that batch may have not sold too well. But because of this run-up, that batch probably sold extremely well. And some of the vendors have actually started listing the next batch, a January 1st to January 15th batch, meaning it'll ship sometime mid-January. We're going to have to wait and see how that goes. But there still is availability for this guy, and the prices did go down quite a bit, meaning that maybe they didn't sell as well as they were hoping, right? So again, this is the end of the day. They can price these things wherever they want, because this thing went up to like 4,500, 5,000 on a lot of the websites. But if people aren't going to buy them at those prices, then they're going to have to lower, right? So a lot of things kind of go into the pricing. Typically, I know a lot of people have been mentioning with this downturn, like, oh, why haven't they dropped? And it's because we've seen that as soon as price action goes up, it's instant. It's literally within those few hours, those prices can increase dramatically, not just 50 bucks, 100 bucks, dramatically, right? But for it to go the inverse, for it to decrease, it needs to be a sustained amount of time. So some of them have been trickling down. We need this price action to stay on a downward trend, right? So again, a lot of the interest for a lot of people, even including myself, is with these Scrypt ASICs, right? So with this recent downtrend, we were nearly 50 cents not that long ago. We're currently down in the 30s, right? I know price action looks horrible, but again, when you zoom out, it's not as bad as it seems. So again, we were recently damn near 50 cents. Down in the 30s, we'll see if we hold this range or if we go lower. If we go lower, that's kind of what you want to see if you want lower prices. But with considering what's happening next month, what these next 3 months in crypto Q1 typically look like, it's not something I would necessarily bank on too much, right? So we're going to have to wait and see what ends up happening. But if we go by the cycle and what typically happens, these first 3 months should be pretty freaking bullish, especially for alts, right? So I wouldn't hold my breath necessarily and say like, oh yeah, we're going down to 15 cents. I'm not sure about all that, right? So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But as far as pricing goes, still high, bro. So January batch. So this is not even spot, right? This is for the January batch. It's $12,800, right? So recently, the spot batches did go up about midway through the month, and it was kind of like confirmed with bitmain whenever they do these little restocks like this. It essentially is kind of repricing the market, right? More than anything, they're just kind of putting it out there, and this is essentially what happened. So their price, again, they did a restock back on the 17th, and it was just kind of resetting the price. It was increasing the price, right? So the after coupon price, 16 gigahash, 910 after the coupons, which again is more the street price, 14.5 for spot for the L9, right? And that's why there was such a big increase in those spot prices, okay? So ultimately, they are high. They are kind of going down a bit in comparison to the spot price, but not much. I mean, 12.8 isn't that great. I have seen some of the other stores begin listing all the way to April, and those are around $10,000. I don't know if I would risk capital that long. I mean, that's going to be 4 months because April can turn into the end of April, can be delayed into May, June, and potentially you miss out on the freaking bull, right? So I'm not too big of a fan, especially this late in the game, on doing pre-orders that far ahead of time, right? Like doing it for this month, maybe a February batch, okay, but to hold out 4 months, and what if that 4 months turns into 6 months, into 7 months? A lot of variables that are not in your favor in a time when it's crucial to have these things yesterday, right? In order to take advantage of yield, collecting, just in case. We'll see how this market goes, right? Because again, this coming year is the year we've been working for, and you want to maximize it, right? You want to get the yield now. So for example, if a April batch is there for 10 grand and this guy is 12.8, even if you're lowballing the revenue and saying you're only going to bring in $1,000 a month, it's still going to be worthwhile getting this guy just because of that revenue you're going to generate by then, right? You have to account for that, especially if things do go up, because then what if prices go up even further? A lot of variables, right? But at the end of the day, it's still hard to justify this price considering the January batch not that long ago was $6,000, right? So it's one of those things you got to catch it before it goes. But hopefully, maybe if Doge does kind of struggle a bit or just go sideways, not necessarily even struggle, but just kind of go sideways, which honestly wouldn't be surprising. I don't see it going down. I see it probably going back up into that 40-cent range, potentially going sideways for a bit, just because how aggressive of a run-up it was already. And again, this is not a tiny cap coin. This is a huge, massive coin. Okay, it's $46 billion market cap. So this is insane when, in retrospect, when you think of how much capital came in to cause this, right? But again, anything can happen. Maybe it goes up well beyond that. Kind of just depends on your opinion of how high you think it can go. Me, my target was about 80 cents, 70 cents, somewhere between 60 to 80 cents realistically prior to the run-up. After this run-up, though, it's hard to say that it's only going to do a 2 to 3x from here, just considering all the hype and the fact that we're going to hear the word Doge pretty aggressively, especially this initial first 12 months, right? While Elon is definitely in, Afterwards, don't really care too much because, again, we want to take advantage of the peak of this cycle, right? So hard to say realistically for any price predictions. I'm kind of waiting until February, March, right? Specifically, realistically waiting for the inauguration, right? To see if that's like a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of event, or if it's just the beginning of crazy bullish action, right? It's really hard to price things just because of how much things ran up, especially these larger caps like Dogecoin, XRP. Like, it's just a massive amount of capital came in, right? So it's hard to think that it's only going to double from here, right? So it's kind of waiting on that front. It's kind of crazy, but let's keep going here. So the L9 again is still relatively high. This is an interesting one, and this is the little Vulk miner D1 mini. We did do a little video. Some of the initial pricing from a lot of the websites was actually in the $2,000 range. $2,000, $2,200, $2,500, depending on the vendor. Or BT Miners has it at $5,000. But this seems to be the pricing. Okay, so it's $1,500 including shipping. It's kind of a game changer price, and this does change things. The downfall here though is it's an April batch, so you are gonna wait quite a bit. But now this does change things quite a bit, right? Especially when compared to its main competitor, which would be what? It would be the ElphaPex, the DG Home 1. And again, initially we were saying if it's about the same price, realistically, I would go with the DG Home 1 all day. Why? Because although percentage-wise, the efficiency difference is pretty huge, but when you really realistically look at the numbers, and if you're only going to consider getting 1, maybe 2 units, again, it's basically the same hash rate, 2.2 versus the 2.1 for only 130 watts difference, right? 500 watts versus the 630 here. Again, percentage-wise, it is a big difference when you compare the efficiency. But real-world-wise, is 130 watts worth it? No. At this price difference now, though, this is a kind of a game changer because you can almost get 2 of them. 2 of them would be 3K versus a single one for 2,300, right? So at this point, it does change things a little bit. The downfall is the wait. Although there is delays going on with this DG Home 1, it was supposed to have already been shipping. It still has not. Although I have seen pictures from some of the resellers getting their December batch in. So hopefully, any of you guys who ordered early, you should be getting your shipped here pretty soon. Some of the vendors are listing January, February batches. I'm not sure how delayed they are or how much it impacted the manufacturing. But there was something there. But at this price, it does kind of change things a little bit. But again, this April wait is what I'm not a fan of. Now, the hope here would be maybe that the D1, the larger Vulk miner unit, does get repriced a bit. Maybe it does go down. Because as we look at the price, it has gone down a bit, right? So it's down to $12,000. It's listed as a 15 gigahash model now. Before it was listed at the 17 gigahash. Now it's 15.15 at 3,400 watts. And it's at 12K. So slightly cheaper than the L9. To me, it's still not cheap enough to justify it. It would need to go under 10 grand just because of the quality difference, right? Realistically, it's kind of a wild card here. We don't necessarily know what to expect versus with the L9. It'd probably be the most reliable unit out of the bunch. ElphaPex seems to be pretty good, although I know some of you guys have had issues with them in the past, so just something to consider there. But in my opinion, it's still not cheap enough, right? Let's keep going down. So the DG1 Plus also did go down a little bit. The 14 gigahash units are under 11K now. Kind of the same issue here. This guy is not as efficient as the other units, but again, it's the same thing. Is those 500 watts, 700 watts that big of a deal to you? Potentially, yes. Potentially not. But again, for this price difference, nearly 11,000 comparing it to the 13 or 12.7 here, probably still rather go with the L9, right? Potentially better quality, better efficiency, potentially better long term here, right? Because if you're going to pay this price, it's because you're anticipating that it's not only going to be profitable during this bull market, but beyond, right? Which is a reason that even with these crazy inflated prices, it is still on my radar for that specific reason. A lot of the other alts, although they are intriguing, they're not necessarily ones I want to hang on to beyond this bull market, right? Literally, the only altcoin ASICs that I want to be holding on to would be Scrypt ASICs, would be ETH hash ASICs, right? So that's where a lot of my primary focus has been and will be, especially if there's any other new releases, just because I think those have the higher chances, specifically out of the altcoin ASICs, to continue to be profitable, okay, because those networks are more mature. So although, yes, I'm bullish on Lithium and Caspa, I'm not bullish on them being super profitable, let's say 6 months after the peak, right? If the cycle repeats, which would be Q3, Q4 of 2025, maybe sooner, maybe later, who knows. But it's just definitely something to factor in. Okay. Some of the others that have dipped a little bit is like the DG1M. It is under 3K again. It's a far cry from the $2,000 it once was. Again, efficiency is kind of a deal here. And whether or not you're going to be able to actually use this thing, right? A lot of people like this thing because they're like, oh, it's an at-home ASIC. It's an 1800 watt ASIC. It does have a low power mode that would be able to get you, I think it's what, 1100 watts, so you would be able to use it indoors, but just obviously it's going to be at a lower hash rate, right? So at that point, it's like, do you want this guy, or does it make more sense to go with the more efficient ElphaPex unit, right? And in my opinion, this would probably still be the better route to go, right? But as far as what's going to be more profitable throughout the bull market, it's going to be hash rate over efficiency. So again, it's going to be very dependent on what you're trying to do here. If you're trying to buy an ASIC and just mine with it for a long period of time, then efficiency is still going to be important, right? But if your goal is to, let's say, get one of these things, mine on it for the next 6 to 8 months, and you're in full confidence that the peak will be November, December of 2025, and you want to just mine on it until August, September when it's already pretty high, and then just dump it at that point, then obviously hash rate is going to be the way to go. But if you are just planning on potentially trying to hold this thing and be able to mine on it for a couple of years, efficiency is going to be the way to go in case we do have another bear market, right? Which again, there's going to be a lot of opinions on that. A lot of people are already saying that this may be the last bear market or that may not be as harsh, which I kind of agree with. I think maybe we won't see such a big downtrend, at least with BTC, right? I'm not sure I'm fully there with alts. Okay, so just a lot of things to factor in. You have to kind of prepare yourself for this coming year and the sentiment and start having game plans, because I'll do a video on it pretty soon, but it's going to get very hard. In my opinion, although this is where all the money's going to be made and this is going to be the most exciting time, it's going to be pretty difficult, right? So we'll talk as to why here in a future video, but just something to consider there. But those are the main differences. We're going to have to wait and see what happens here. Again, a lot of it is just going to have to do with price action, right? As far as if we get any further price reductions or any further price increases, right? Which again, if the cycle kind of plays out where we think it may, then chances are these are going to be kind of the lows, right? So it's going to be dependent on each individual coin, though. It's not something that's like across all phases, just because certain coins are going to pump later than others, right? And this is something you have to kind of understand. Like, it helps to understand the markets, the ebbs and the flows, just so you can kind of get an idea, right? Because although certain coins may pump, like BTC has been on a freaking rocket ship, a lot of the alts haven't, right? Or even right now where Bitcoin has gone down 15%, some of the alts have gone down drastically, right? They've gone down in half, some cases more, and it's just very dependent, right? So this is where we want to pay attention to with these ebbs and flows and what the market is doing, what the individual coin is doing. But it does help that if you are in the market for one of these things, kind of narrow down the specific units you're kind of anticipating, right? That way you can kind of see like, okay, even though this one's going up and the general market is going up, this coin, this particular project is kind of going down, or it's not doing so well. There's a lot of FUD right now. Then there could be a potential price reduction or lowering of the prices. It's very dependent, right? A lot of factors at play. But typically when alts do run, a lot of them tend to run together, right? So although a lot of them did dip in half, with this recent run up, a lot of the coins did go up significantly, right? Some hit like 2-3x's from their recent lows, and that's why although they go down in half, the prices of the ASICs didn't really change much, just because they did run up so much already, right? Doge being a prime example of that, where although yes, it went down from 50 cents down to 30 cents, like, oh man, is it gonna go lower? Again, we were at 10 cents just a few months ago, right? Literally October, we were 10 cents, right? So even with this crash, we're still a 3x from where we were just a few months ago, right? So just kind of, although sentiment feels bad, when you look at the short term, again, when in doubt, zoom out so you can kind of get clarity on the situation. That's why a lot of us are laughing when everybody's crying and doom and gloom about BTC being down to, even if it goes down to 89, it's like you have to zoom out and see like where it's been, right? Again, this is the crash that everybody is so freaking fearful of, or everybody's scared of right now, right? It's, you gotta zoom out, look back at where we were just a few months ago, right? And that's where your perception of things kind of changes. Just have a more long-term point of view, right? But let me know in the comments, guys. Are you guys buying anything else? Are you guys just kind of waiting? I'm kind of, again, my cutoff was like September, October. Realistically, although these prices are inflated, I still am looking, just because I'm kind of waiting for some of my ASICs to become a more inflated price, therefore being able to sell those into something else with the intention of potentially just continuing to roll over these ASICs, right? So again, everything's dependent on your strategies. I know the typical sentiment is like, oh, it's too late to buy ASICs. Again, it depends on your goals, right? So like for me, my goal would be able to, if Cadena does rip more, if CKB does rip more, and those ASIC prices do go up, if they do inflate, hopefully be able to sell those and then flip them into something else, into either another ASIC, or may just hang on to that capital for further down the road, right? We're gonna have to wait and see on everything, but let me know in the comments, guys, what are you guys interested in the most? What are you guys picking up, if anything at all, right? Please comment and like and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.